we're having a giveaway. I want to hear from you to find out what content you want to hear. So email me at brad@physiciansguidetodoctoring.com with a suggestion for a topic you'd like covered or a guest you'd want to hear on the show. And you'll be entered into a lottery for a PGD Yeti tumbler. I'll do the drawing in 2 weeks and announce the winner in our newsletter. So you have until 2 weeks from when you hear this, from when this airs, to enter. May the most loyal listener win. This show is sponsored by Set for Life Insurance, the ultimate client experience in the insurance industry. Are you looking for the perfect insurance coverage that suits your needs? Founded in 1993 by President Jamie K. Fleischner, Set for Life Insurance specializes in individual life, disability, and long-term care insurance. As brokers, they represent numerous companies in the industry, ensuring that their clients get the best products at the most cost-effective rate. What sets Set for Life Insurance apart? You'll enjoy special discounts, priority underwriting handling, and even exceptions in the underwriting process. So why wait? Contact Set for Life Insurance today and let them be your insurance partner for life. Visit their website at setforlifeinsurance.com or call them at 1-888-553-3559. On this episode, how to make your patients like you in 90 seconds or less. Time starts now. Hey, this is Brad Block, host of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. This is a personal and professional development podcast for physicians where we have experts on the show that try to teach us everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. Nick Boothman, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Great to be here. I forgot my stethoscope. I wanted to look the part.
Very nice. So for the guests who haven't heard of him, and many of you I'm sure have, Nicholas Boothman has spent more than 25 years studying the ways that different people connect and communicate. He actually started out as a photographer, fashion and advertising photographer, observing people from behind the lens. And so all that time spent observing, he turned into now being called by the New York Times one of the leading experts in face-to-face communication in the world. He's taught his revolutionary technique of rapport by design. I love doing everything by design. Report by design to thousands of corporations, colleges, and universities around the world, including the Harvard and London business schools. His first 2 books, How to Make People Like You in 90 Seconds or Less and Convince Them in 90 Seconds or Less, have been translated into more than 30 languages. Former fashion and advertising photographer who dealt with hundreds of new faces a week for clients like AT&T, Revlon, and Coca-Cola, he's now recognized as a world-renowned expert in turning first impressions into profitable relationships, and the New York Times has called him the new Dale Carnegie. Again, Nick Boothman, thank you so much for taking the time to teach us how to make patients like us in 90 seconds or less.
Oh man, listen, this is my passion. My passion is to get the word out there. I've just started putting on my website that anthropologists now agree that it is not the survival of the fittest that got us to where we are. It's the survival of the friendliest. Our ability to connect and form groups and do things together is why we're still going strong. So this is my message, and this is huge.
Agreed. I mean, we talk about it on the show for many reasons, for good or for bad. Human beings are tribal. And if you are likable, you will have a better place in the tribe. If you're not likable, you may end up excommunicated from the tribe. And, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, that would mean death. So yes, I totally agree. Likability is critical. So my question is, can we really learn to be more likable? Or isn't that an immutable trait that we're just born with or not?
Well, I mean, super duper question, but I want to start by saying when I say make people like you, it means make them feel comfortable and trust you. I mean, we use the word like, and some people say, I don't care if people like me or not. Well, you know what? That's a pretty stupid thing to say, really, because as you were starting to say, there are 3 good reasons why it's important that people like you or trust and feel comfortable with you. Number 1, when we like somebody, we tend to see the best in them and what they represent. If we don't like them, we immediately tend to see the worst in them. When we like people, we unconsciously look for reasons to say yes to them. And the flip side, if we don't like someone, and the third thing is, it's really great to go to work with people that you trust and feel comfortable with. You know, all it takes is one jerk in a group to make the day drag all day long. You go home in a bad mood, you go back to work thinking, oh, not another day at this. So these are really pretty big deals.
So one of the things I love is the 90 seconds, right? Because we see, 20, 30 patients a day, some more, right? So we have a really limited amount of time for each patient to get them, find out what's wrong with them, figure it out, examine them, explain it to them, and then have them agree. And so we really have that short period of time. So, but why did you why 90 seconds?
Because if I'd have told the truth, I mean, already people thought, ooh, this guy's crazy. But if I'd have told the truth and said how to make people like you in 2 seconds or less, everyone would have thought I was a raving nutter. But the truth is that we decide how we feel about somebody in the first 2 seconds of seeing them or hearing them if it's on the phone. It's the fight or flight response. We look immediately. Look, I say to my audiences, how long do you think it takes? And blah, 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 we count down the numbers and eventually some people get it. But some people say, 90 seconds. I say, are you telling me that if you're in your apartment or your house and a stranger's walking up to your door, it's going to take you 90 seconds to figure out if they're getting in or not? It's a flash. We decide how we feel about someone in the first 2 seconds of seeing them. And right or wrong, I mean, look, people say, oh, you shouldn't do that. Well, you know what? I meet tons of people who say, when people get to know me, they really like me. But you know what? That's fantastic for your family and your next door neighbor and anybody else who can't escape you. But the point is that we do make those snap decisions, and patients make those snap decisions, and physicians make those snap decisions about people. It's the fight or flight response, and it's unconscious. And you can't stop people doing it, but there's a lot you can do to make it work in your favor.
Well, let's talk about that then, right? Because when we walk into the exam room, right? I mean, or it's an emergency medicine physician. It's not necessarily an exam room. It's there, in the curtain. You're an anesthesiologist. You're meeting a patient that you've never met, that you're about to give anesthesia for like a major surgery, right? You've got a really short period of time, but that's great because we don't need that long. So how would you recommend that we start this interaction?
Well, I guess what we might want to do here is break down then, because I'm not a physician, but break this down into emergency situations or going to the doctor, or going to the hospital and meeting someone. Because, I mean, the time component I'm guessing, with emergency surgery is kind of different than...
No, I think for emergency surgery, it's there's like someone who's had a trauma and they're crashing, and then rapport building goes by the wayside. We're just trying to save that. But even with like an emergency appendectomy, that's not as like, we still have time to introduce ourselves, and in the same time period that if someone came in with a cold, like because if you came in with a cold, you've got 30, 40 other people waiting for your attention. So we really all, if someone's dying, there's no rapport building and everything else. There is a little bit of time there. So I think we can compartmentalize that as all being the same.
Okay. Thanks. Well, the thing, excuse me 1 second. I'm going to take off my mic and cough. I learned to do that on stage when there's no sound guy.
We have an excellent sound guy, and he will take care of that.
Oh, good. Thanks. Look, first of all, the thing is, patients want to connect with your human side, not your professional side, because that's the side they feel safe with, and that's the side they trust. So what do humans do in those situations normally? Well, it's simple. First of all, look them in the eye. Smiles may not be the best thing, I don't know, in your medical situations, but look them in the eye and smile. Point your heart towards them. It doesn't, not like a lunatic, but don't cross over and hide your heart. It makes them feel safer. And synchronize your body language with theirs. This is a really simple thing to do. Just, you're nodding now, I'm nodding with you. Things like that, yeah? And you do that now. Okay. And what happens when you're synchronizing is, in their mind, they say, I don't know what it is about this person, but there's something I really like. Well, they're being a bit like you. But it's normal. It's what families do when they get along well. You look around a restaurant, look at the people who are getting on. They pick up their knives and fork at the same time. They lean forward at the same time to talk to each other. They sit back. It's just simple synchronizing of your body language is a great way to do it. But the first thing is, if you're not good at eye contact, and not everybody is, just notice what color their eyes are. That's enough, and you can forget it straight away. That's enough eye contact to say trust is in the air, because that's what happens. Eye contact sends the unconscious signal that trust is in the air. Pointing your heart at somebody sends the unconscious signal that not going to harm you. I've got nothing in my hands. I'm not hiding anything. I'm exposing my heart. It's just an unconscious signal. And a smile too. I mean, if there's a situation where you can do a smile says, I'm happy and confident.
Yeah.
Obviously, if someone comes in, half dead, and you're not going to start smiling at them, I assume.
No, I mean, but in most situations, even if, people are sick, we can still approach them. Not everything is grave in what we do. A lot of stuff is, but not, and, we can figure out when it's appropriate to smile. But I really like these recommendations because I was afraid some of them were going to be too onerous, right? Because once you get into the visit, we've got so much to concentrate on. But what you're talking about, as you said earlier, is just the first 2 seconds. So you walk into a room, these 2 things, look at their eye color, point your heart at them. No, notice their eye color, not your own. Point your heart at them, and then the visit, and then you make an introduction, and the visit gets started. So I really like those things.
And the big one, the absolute holy grail of first impressions, is finding common ground. The minute you find common ground with somebody, you have a bond with them.
Yeah.
Now, it's socially or in business, it might be, look, I get people to stand next to each other in even in my big speeches, and just say, look, find common ground. Not that you both work for the same company, you're both doctors, you're both wearing shirts. But maybe you've got twins in the family. Maybe you both cried when you watched Titanic. I don't know. And you know what? They're like old friends forever.
Yeah.
And in any occupation, you can do that with somebody. It's the hunt for common ground. That is the biggest one you can possibly get. And when you get good at it, most people can find common ground in about 10 or 15 seconds.
That's great. That's great. And then, I find that chatting people up, like, how was your weekend? Or if it's Friday, what are you doing this week? And something like that, like getting them. And then that is often a way to find something similar, a little lighthearted during the doctor's visit, a little lighthearted.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Well, let's talk about that if you want to. I mean, it's a great thing. I'm not mad about asking closed questions.
Okay.
How was your weekend? Good. Now I'll think of another question, right? I get people to do what I call it, ask talk show host questions.
Okay.
If you look at a talk back in the day when you were talk show host, but today it's what you are doing exactly what I'm about to say. You start with a statement followed by an open question. And you're doing it all the time right now. That's what journalists do. That's what talk show hosts do. The example, a while back, I did this on Good Morning America. And they said, okay, well, what do you mean? I said, okay, because I was in New York. They said, I hear New York's a fantastic place. If I only had 4 hours, what should I see? Then it's over to them. So you set the stage with, I know a parking lot's like a nightmare this morning. How do you find a parking spot? And then you're off. And then all you have to do is what you're doing right now is send feedback.
Yeah.
Either spoken feedback or physical feedback, or what I call international grunts will do, which is, there's nothing in the world worse than talking to somebody who doesn't give you feedback. It's like talking to a brick wall. All you want to do is run for it. That's really scary. So give feedback. I remember my doctor, my first doctor, when I moved to Canada, she happens to be now the minister of something or other in the government, but she would give too much feedback. She'd be nodding all the time like this, looking really interested. It's like someone told her what to do. When she went off to be a member of parliament, the doctor that followed, it's just like being in the pub in a conversation. It's relaxed, and she's talking, and she saved my life twice. She's absolutely my hero. But she's got it. She's so got it. It's just, I do, occasionally I do one-on-one coaching for people, very occasionally. And there are always people usually people with lots of money and think that, nobody loves them or that they're getting hard done by socially. And the last person I did, what I do is I do 4 sessions, and I'm not doing them now, but the deal was, we have to meet first face to face, first time. And I won't do anyone in Canada, in the country I live in. So basically, people would fly in. I go out to the airport, which was cool. I loved it. I would get on the subway, go to the airport, meet them at Tim Hortons or a cafe at the airport. And I say, look, because I always wear red shoes. I say, I'm the guy in red shoes and I'm eating in the cafe. And I can tell as they walk towards me everything about them. They'll be looking around. And what's more, they've been reading up on my book about what to do, so they'll come over doing it, stiff as hell. And the last guy that came, he was terribly paranoid. And he sat down and he's trying to synchronize my body language and all this sort of thing and do it all by the book. And I said, at one point, I said, stop, you're driving me crazy. You're so intense. Just let it all go. And he sort of, I said, no, man, just, I don't know, open your legs, sit back, lay back, look around here, look at everybody else. And he said, and then when he went back, he said, I'm fixed. He said, I don't need the rest of the thing, keep the money, but I'm fixed. He was just too intense about everything.
Yeah.
If you do a little bit of eye contact, smiling is great, but not everybody has a smile. So I teach people just to say, I give them in the books, you'll see. I say, look, if I was a fashion photographer, and not all professional models, I was a fashion photographer for 25 years, not all professional models have a natural smile. So what happens in the studio is when they come in, we'll use the word great in bursts of 3, we'll go great. And then so the assistant will go great, and the hairdresser will go great, and the model will go great. And before you know it, their eyes are smiling, and their mouth is smiling. So I tell people, look, if you want to have a great smile, go home tonight, look yourself in the mirror in the bathroom, lock the door, and go great, until you feel incredibly stupid or you crack up. Then the next time you're going to meet somebody, under your voice as you approach, just go, great. And you know what? It will trigger that your eyes will be smiling, and you will be really smiling. And it's such a simple thing.
Yeah.
And, and it's great.
It's great.
Great.
What are some of the pitfalls that we might fall in? Aside, you mentioned it, having a fake looking smile or a grimace, right? Where you're frowning in the room or really thinking too hard about all this stuff. So you're all stiff. But with that first interaction, right? That first introduction, any big mistakes that we can make? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Lack of eye contact. You're busy, you're thinking, you've probably looked at the person. I don't know.
We're looking at the computer. That's our big thing, is we're always having to type and look at our computer, and we're focused too much on that. So, so make sure we got it.
Well, I talk about that as well for people who are in social media. I say, look, if you're talking to somebody, you're going to look away. Say, look, if I'm looking away, it's just because I'm making notes. That's all. Let them know that. Not that you're bloody doing the football pools or playing Cluedo or something. Remember that?
Yeah, I used to say Minesweeper, but I don't think that's on computers anymore.
But those things, just it really is. If you can get to the point where you think your patient, or obviously, some of them must drive you crazy, but they're like your favorite cousin or your crazy uncle or whatever. I call it assuming rapport. You can do the stuff I've told you, or you can simply assume rapport and assume. Have you ever been to England?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, the Brits are brilliant at that. They'll talk to anybody half the time. You're standing at the bus stop. Oh, look at this. And they assume rapport, which means that you synchronize your body language to the person. If they come in and they're like this, you've got to do the same thing, or where you are now, you're doing that with your face. Not quite that much. But just synchronize body language with them, and they'll feel totally comfortable. It's simpler than you can possibly imagine. But earlier on, what you were alluding to at the beginning was that these physicians, they really want to be better at. Well, is that true? Because I've spoken to groups. I've been hired to speak to groups of doctors. They ain't the best audiences. They don't want to hear from some guy saying, this is how you should do it, or this is what works for you. I'm a little skeptical about a lot of physicians because they are the toughest audience I've ever had.
Not my listeners, because this is what we talk about on the show. So this is a self-selecting audience that are people that are trying to be better. That's the whole premise of the podcast, is they're just trying to improve themselves in all aspects of their life, be it in or out of the exam room. So this is in the exam room, but it'll help them out of the exam room. And I would argue a good place to practice this stuff is out of the exam room. And then you'll more naturally do it in the exam room.
With your co-workers, with your obviously your patients with their families and all this sort of thing. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Another thing is that I'm sure you know this, or I'm sure you've had someone on talking about it, but I mean, I have a book called, I wrote this, The Power of Story Speak, and it's not that widely available because I wrote it for a different reason, for a training. But, in the research, and again, do stop me if you've spoken about this, but patients don't want to hear they'd rather hear from another patient who's been through it than the doctor. They want a story. They want to hear someone else's story. I think it was John Cleese, the guy from Monty Python. He did a whole bunch of training videos for doctors, along with an English doctor called Dr. Rob Boothman. And they did everything from ballroom dancing with a colostomy bag and all this sort of thing, just to say, look, you're not the only one going through this.
Yeah.
But they do. We spend approximately 80% of our lives devouring stories of one kind or another, which is exactly what your podcast is. This is a bunch of stories. And whether it's a gossip, whether it's a story, take a chicken, do this, stick it in there. We listen. It's all about stories. We feel so great with stories. So maybe to some extent, doctors can learn to come up with a little bit of story speak or use metaphors to do things.
We actually had an episode with a neurologist, Scott Abramson, who, devoted a lot of his career to improving the doctor-patient interaction. Actually, he's going to be on the show again soon. And he wrote a book where he talks about, that's one of the things he talks about. Patients don't respond to statistics. Oh, there's a 30% chance or there's a 25% chance that you might. But if you come in with, well, my Aunt Fanny had symptoms just like that. And funny thing, as it turns out, her diagnosis was X. Wow, I never would have thought that'd be the case. But there's a lot of stuff that you're explaining that really sounds, I think it might be the same situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing is, I went through 20 odd years ago, I went through a bout of, I went through, let me get to the point. I rewrote the lexicon on the big C, because I think the whole lexicon to do with that is a load of rubbish. It's really bloody scary. So I went for premotherapy. I had a boncologist, and I had first of all, there's no such thing as cancer. It's not a thing. It's a process. Okay, not a thing. It's a process. So I didn't have cancer. I had a cancering colon. That means it's in action. It's moving, and it can be moved over the cliff into the sea. And I also never went in a waiting room. I went once because it was raining, and someone was staying. This is while I was going for my premotherapy, and someone said, "Oh, peanut butter's just doing me." And I thought, "Oh no, man! I'm having peanut butter every day for breakfast. Now I got to think it's probably going to do me in." So I'm not going in there anymore with listening to people moaning and groaning about what's not working for them. I mean, there's a little things, but I'm just talking from my own experience.
Yeah, no, that's.
I think the lexicon around certain subjects. So getting back to your point, which I found scary just listening to, then say, well, there's a 25% chance. I think that doesn't sound too good. I don't like that. Then again, there are people who want the facts, I guess.
Right, but we don't respond as well to that. I read somewhere that human beings can't comprehend numbers greater than 2 or 3. So you have 1, 2, 3, or many. So anything above that, the numbers are just too big. So if you say like, well, there's a 98% chance, this is just too big to conceptualize. I still think it's important to share this information, because if we have the knowledge, it's the onus is on us to share it with them. And then if they respond to it, we can take a deeper dive. And if they don't, then we can just leave it at that. But so something else that you wrote about in your book was attitude. So I want to talk about that next. Right?
Yeah. Well,
so, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, please.
So what is the significance of attitude, and can we fake it?
Well, you can. No.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
No. Yes. No. Look, the significance is the very first thing we respond to when we see somebody is their attitude. If you're looking across the platform or across the cafe, across the bar at somebody, they're not even looking at you. We respond to their attitude, the quantity and the quality of the energy they're giving off. If I'd have come on this podcast this morning, like this, you'd have been responding to me angry. You'd be responding to me in a different way. The thing about attitudes is And attitude not only drives your behavior, it drives the other person's behavior, because that's just the way we're wired up. However, let's get straight what I mean by attitude. I'm not talking about positive attitudes or negative attitudes. I totally don't get that subjective. I'm talking about, in the book, I call them really useful attitudes and really useless attitudes. Really useful attitudes might be welcoming, curious, resourceful, enthusiastic. These are really useful attitudes. When you can, you don't have to do it all day long, but when you're connecting with somebody, find one that comes naturally to you. Maybe you're naturally a curious person. Maybe you're a naturally resourceful person. Really useless attitudes are things like bored, rude, hostile, or appearing that way when you're really not. People who listen to you like this, and you think, oh, you creep, stop doing that. But that's just the way you've learned to listen. Well, uncross your flipping hands, and be nice. And they are very scary. Look, I'm closer to 80 than I am 70, and I have had my share of physicians in my life, and I've got some that I have one who's even hired me to speak to doctors, and he is the worst. He never does eye contact. He's always late. He's good, and he'll never change. And so, yeah. But I mean, the nice ones, I could spend all day with them. But so they have to learn to give me the hook and get me out of there.
So let's say it's an emergency department physician, right? We'll use an extreme circumstance, right? Emergency department physician, they were just resuscitating a patient in the other room. Patient passes away, right? So they leave the room and they've got to find a way to go on to the next patient who might be in with like a low-grade fever that's just making the patient nervous. The patient not sure when to go to the doctor, so they just go to the doctor for lots of stuff. So how can they think about their attitude in that situation, right? You're coming from a pretty dark place. You just watch someone die in front of you, and now you got to go to the next patient. So how does attitude play a role there?
Well, you tell me first of all, it's personal, but
yeah.
I've got lists in my book of really useful attitudes and really useless attitudes. And if you are a normally resourceful person, you fall back into your resourceful attitude.
Okay.
What can I do now? What can I help? Because they will pick up on your attitude.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that you have to be, jolly fellow. No, I'm just saying what would be useful in that situation? Maybe curiosity. Maybe your spirituality. I don't know what for each different person. But you do have to compartmentalize. And listen, that's what you train as, how you handle it yourself. Maybe everybody handles it differently.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think finding a useful attitude, whether it's compassion, I don't know. Look at the book, look at the list, go to the library, download it. My books have been stolen everywhere. You can get them online.
But I think that word useful, because as you walk into that next patient's room, your job is not to be jolly your job is to be useful. So I think just going into that room thinking, how am I going to be useful to that patient, is a good way to just fall back on without needing to, completely change your mental space.
Negative attitude. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. Useful. How am I going to be useful? Yeah, I like that. Well, let's say the patient comes in with a useless attitude, right? They're pissed because they were waiting a long time, or there was a problem with their paperwork and they needed to do it all over. Something where they come in with a useless attitude. What do we do in that situation?
Synchronize with them. Synchronize their body language. Just synchronize their body language and lead them out of it. The words go, and, if they're like this and, like this, you can kind of be like this back with them until you slow it down and just open them up, because they'll be closed in. Yeah, just synchronize them. Make it into a game. I was interviewed by a woman on a radio program in Birmingham, Alabama, but they speak a bit funny. And I'm sure you've got people remember what I have to say. I was on a book tour and I was picked up by a very nice lady that you always have an escort to drive you around to radio shows. And we were leaving the airport and she's talking to me and I said, look, I have to say something. I know you're speaking English, but I don't know what you're saying. It was so funny. Anyway, but it got to the radio station, and like any good interviewer, like you've read the books. The really useless ones have said, "Oh, send me some questions to ask you," so I don't, and then we never go. But this woman said, "Look, I read your book, and I read this bit about synchronizing. So I went out. Well, if you synchronize with someone, they start to feel that we've got stuff in common. She said, my husband and I went out for dinner on Saturday night, and I thought, I'm going to synchronize with someone in this restaurant. She said, there was a woman over to the side about 15 feet away, and I could see her from my peripheral vision, and I just synchronized when she moved like this or picked something up. I did the same. She said, you won't believe it. After about 20 minutes, she came across and said, I know you from somewhere. Where do I know you from? And she said, it was incredible. It was a human thing, this synchronizing body language, respectfully. So synchronizing with a peed off patient, and look, have some fun. See if it works, Just get their body language in a very non-threatening way.
Do you have a little more time? I have just a couple more questions for you.
But yeah, I thought it was an hour anyway. So.
Okay, great. Then we got a bunch more time. In that situation, how do you prevent someone from thinking that you're mimicking them?
Because you do it properly. You don't go over the top. That's why I get my audiences to synchronize. You synchronize the overall. But look, it's natural. That's how we grow up. That's how we learn our skills. It's how you learn how to hold your knife and fork from watching your parents or other people do stuff. It's natural. But I say to my audiences, okay, stand up, synchronize. Now break synchronization, see what happens. As soon as you break synchronization, I've got A and B, and as soon as B starts doing something else, if you don't even know where the conversation was going, everything goes, it's crazy, it interrupts everything. But I say, look, but if A does this, and B does this, B is an idiot. Because it's not everything, it's just the overall, like with you now, it's perfectly natural if, I'm looking at you, well, I'm looking at the camera, but then you're down there somewhere, but we're just synchronizing ourselves, that's all, in a nice way. You can synchronize the speed of your conversation. You can, look, I've just remembered, because where the hell, oh, it's in my other studio. I've got it to show you. I did actually a training video called How to Connect in Healthcare in 90 Seconds or Less. And one of the things I talked about was with a patient, first thing if it's somebody who's like in bed, I guess, or having a rough time, start synchronizing with their breathing. Breathe at the same speed they're breathing. If you want to be compassionate. I think that's probably for families or whatever I say. But if you start to synchronize your breathing with the person, there'll be an immediate bond because you're both speaking on the out breath to each other. You're both breathing in together. It's kind of magic.
You mentioned families, which actually made me think of something that you said earlier with the eye color. And noticing the eye color of the patient, yes, but also noticing the eye color of every family member, of everyone else in the room. Because something that we sometimes do, and I certainly sometimes do, is I'll focus so much on the patient and not so much on the family, but everyone in the room is someone to be considered and respected and everything. So I think you mentioned family, which made me think, yes, and noticing the eye color of everyone in the room is a great idea. And
co-workers as well.
Yes.
Just look. It's enough, look them in the eye, smile is what I talk about, and then synchronize your body language and then find common ground, etc. All of that happens in about 25 seconds. I mean, the initial contact is, go to a restaurant, look at restaurants where the staff all get on with each other. That's a great thing to observe. Their body language is the same, they laugh the same way, they do the same way, and all that sort of thing. But eye contact is the big one. Eye contact sends the unconscious signal that trust is in the air. And,
but don't overdo it. But don't, because as physicians we tend to, right? We tend to take like your client that was overthinking it and ended up making them too stiff. We tend to do that, right? You tell us to do something, okay, right? I'm going to dive headlong into it. I'm going to be the best person at it. But what you're saying is subtly, so just make sure it's not every single thing they do, just like a general sense, the subtle similarities in, how they're sitting, how they're holding their head,
Too much smiling and too much eye contact is unbelievably creepy.
Yes.
It's really weird. A split second is enough eye contact because not everyone can do it. That's why I say, look, my book is unofficially used by the Asperger's Society because I'm not a doctor. They can't officially endorse it. But right from the time How to Make People Like You came out, it's been, because I don't say, make eye contact. I say, just notice what color their eyes are. I don't say smile. I say, just say great to yourself a couple of times and you'll be smiling. It's just totally simple things to do. And assuming rapport. Assuming rapport means we just stand like as if we're both in a store together waiting for something to happen or whatever. It's just supernatural.
I love the saying, the dose makes the poison. So that would be the same thing with eye contact.
Yeah.
A little bit is the right dose, and too much is going to turn it into poison. So yes, brief eye contact.
Yeah.
Let's say during the visit, it started off great. You found common ground, you made eye contact, you had an open posture, your heart's facing theirs, right? Everything's going
only
well.
For a second. Your heart is only exposed for a split second. You're not sort of walking around like this. Just enough to say,
don't overdo it. Yes.
I'm not going to harm you. It's only say, I'm not going to harm you. You're safe.
Which may not be the case, because we might, but first, do no harm, right? We found that the visit is slowly going south, right? The ship is turning in the wrong direction. How do we right the ship?
Tell me what you mean.
Well, so we've said some things. We tried to make a joke and the joke didn't hit well. We think that they meant something about their symptoms and really they meant something else. So we misunderstood them. And you notice that their body language is starting to close off. When they answer questions, they're much shorter. So the patient is clearly feeling a loss of trust during the visit because there are other things that didn't go well. So any way to help?
Yeah, well, golden rule number 1, don't make jokes. Just say something that might be amusing or colorful, but don't make jokes. You're not going to win that game. I mean, old speakers learn that in the end. Do you hear the one about that? Or, this is... No jokes. I wouldn't do that at all. You can adjust your attitude by being lighthearted about something. And lots of feedback is a big one. Just nod, as we mentioned earlier. I'm listening to you. I'm nodding and grunting with you and all that sort of thing. And the other thing is, if you think it's going south, it may not be going south. I have people say to me, "Oh, people don't like me." I say, "How do you know that? How do you know they don't like you? Most people don't know what they're thinking. Never mind what someone else is thinking. Oh, well, they look away." But I say, well, when I first started speaking, I would have maybe 10% of the audience were always looking down, looking away and whatever and all this sort of thing. But, at the end, and I'm thinking, oh, it's a bummer. I'm going to talk to somebody else. But in the end, they were the ones that had the great questions. Because it's just,
It's how they were concentrating, yeah.
Well, we can, if we went further, we can go into visual people, auditory people, and kinesthetic people. They make their decisions. Look, about a third of the population are primarily kinesthetic, touchy-feely. That means that they make their decisions based on the way they feel. Everyone thinks they're visual because they cross the road with their eyes open, but about 7% of the population are primarily auditory. They make sense of the world by the way things sound. And about half the population are primarily visual. Show me the pictures, show me the facts, whatever. But here's an example. Let's say I'm a travel agent and somebody comes in, says, I want to go on holiday. If I can immediately spot, let's say that they are kinesthetic, touchy-feely person, which is very easy to spot once you know how to do it. For that, we can't do it here. Borrow one of my books or whatever. It shows you how to do it quickly. But if they're kinesthetic, I'd say, I got a great place for you. The sand's soft, the water's so warm, and the beds are incredibly comfortable. I'm telling them what the place feels like. And they're going, oh, swoon. If they are auditory, I will say, I got a great place for you. All you can hear are the waves and the gulls. It's away from all the noise of the city, and they sort of melt before you. And if they're visual, say, hey, look at the pictures. What do you think of this? That's all.
Yeah. In
conversation, look, I've got 5 children and 2,000 grandchildren, but I've got at least one of each and everything. And I'm exaggerating, by the way, about my grandchildren. But, for example, with my auditory daughter, I'll say, hey, how does this sound to you? Okay. To my kinesthetic daughter and my wife, I would say, how do you feel about such and such? And to my visual son, I say, Thomas, how do you see this working out? How do you picture this? And I've gone straight on to their primary sense. But this is kind of advanced stuff.
Yeah.
That's why stories work, because it appeals to metaphors. It appeals to everybody. And I hope that I'm not making that sound complicated, because it's not complicated.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. And, for a deeper dive, definitely check out the books. I want to ask you, actually, speaking of books, how to make someone fall in love with you in 90 minutes or less, right? Yeah. Certainly, we don't want our patients to fall in love with us. But what I'm talking about is more of the long game, right? The relationship building after those first introductions. So we don't have 90 minutes, but, maybe over many visits or a longer visit. So, anything else that you would recommend in terms of rapport building for those longer relationships?
But you're not talking about dating or falling in love to get married.
No, 100. There are laws against that. Definitely do not date your patients.
Yeah, well, I'm sure your listeners, your viewers are interested in
yes
in that. Well, if you look at we discovered all my books, first of all, are not based on what I think. They're based on modeling excellence using neuro-linguistic programming. We've been out but to write my love book, which is the book that everyone who's read it says it's the best book I've written, and I do too. Except it doesn't sell, because who's going to buy a book about love written by an English guy? Well, if I was Italian or Spanish or something, it would be great. So, but the thing is, we interviewed 2,400 couples who've been together for more than 20 years and were still actively bonkers about each other, crazy about each other. And we looked for common threads, and we looked for common threads in about 200 people who consistently mess up in relationships. We found some really fun things, and maybe it's relative to this question. First of all, we found we don't fall in love with other people. We fall in love with the feelings we get when we're with them. We get addicted to them, Great couples are what I call matched opposites. They're matched in, and this works. We actually did this for a law firm where we used the matched opposites thing for lawyers and their assistants, their PAs or whatever they were. And then we've made sure they were matched opposites. In other words, they weren't like attracts like, and they weren't opposites attract. Matched opposites are matched in a way, their upbringing, they hold their knives and forks the same way, whatever, but they're opposites in their behavior. So they want to go over the same horizon together, but they bring different behaviors to it.
So you shore up each other's weaknesses.
Well, I wouldn't use that word. I mean, you just complement each other. Yeah, but you're not. Look, like attracts like.
Yeah.
Is eventually you drive each other crazy. Opposites attract. Yeah, for about 5 minutes, and then that's then not going anywhere either. I mean, I'm saying this because I have been married twice, but my second marriage now, we've been married for 52 years, so I do have some creds to bring to this, and But I'm not answering your question about long-term relationships with clients. I just think, look, this is probably going to go down completely the wrong way, but selling, most professions, in a way, it's all like dating. I mean, you want to, obviously not romantic or anything like that, but you do want to just feel good with somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I mean, I don't want to mix up how to make people fall.
No, but there's a big overlap between the two. There's a big overlap between, this is one of the ideas behind this podcast, is taking things that aren't typically used in the doctor-patient relationship and applying them. So yes, no, not making your patient fall in love with you, but, there's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram.
Yeah, look at my body language. I'm getting defensive now. But I got in a lot of trouble for a post I once wrote about flirting your way to the top, because it was taken that I meant, show your legs to the boss or whatever. Look, I'm of an age where I'm probably as politically incorrect as you can get, and I'm fessing up right now because I was brought up in England and all that stuff. And I say the wrong thing sometimes. But I meant by look, I'm flirting with you now, and you're flirting with me to some extent, with just the way we look at each other and the little smirks and things. That's what I meant by it. Instead of being so serious about everything, it's just being light-hearted. For me, that's what flirting is. I flirt. Look, you watch. I'm on a farm. If I open the window here, I can see all my horses. The horses flirt with each other. The horses flirt with I got my family, and my daughter's getting married here on the weekend. So we got the house full of people. If flirting may be the wrong word, but it's just being super nice. It's sort of fun and fun with each other. And I think that's once you get a relationship with a patient, and you don't have to be, I mean, you can maybe smirk occasionally about something that you remember that you went through together. It's just, everyone's getting so uptight about stuff. Okay,
Agreed.
Cut that out. Take the scissors to this job.
One last question, because a lot of the listeners have side gigs, right? Like nowadays, being a physician doesn't seem to be enough. So we all do other things, right?
Yeah.
Or many of us do. So we've got business relationships that aren't just our colleagues in medicine. So maybe we're doing some networking. So if we're having a networking interaction, right? You go to a conference, something, is that any different from, and I would imagine the answer is no, but I want to hear from you, that interaction any different from what we've talked about earlier?
I think, let me tell you about, essentially, we humans, we only really do 6 things on a day-to-day basis. 5 of them are we go out into the world and have experiences through our 5 senses. We see, we hear, we feel physical sensations, smell, taste. There's only one other thing we do, really. We process language. We put our experiences into words. And first we explain them to ourselves, then we explain them to other people. I mean, that's what I'm doing now. I'm explaining my experiences to you, and you'll be explaining your experiences to other people. But how do we do that? Well, as your experiences become words, your words become thoughts, your thoughts become ideas, your ideas become actions, your actions become habits. Your habits drive your personality, drives your side gig, or your whatever. Okay. But it's at the point where we take our ideas to other people. We do it in 3 ways. One, and we've been talking a bit about this, is through, and we'll be able to make this distinction when you deal with patients. One is conversation. Conversation is where we find a reason to find common ground or whatever and bond with other people. We converse to build trust into a relationship, even if it's only for a few seconds. The next way is something called communication. Communication is completely different to conversation because it's goal-oriented. We communicate to get something. If I want my daughter to tidy her room, we might be chatting for a few months and say, hey, by the way, now we're into communication. I want to tidy your room or whatever, And the third way is through story speak. The greatest communicators in the world tell short stories and whatever. Now, as far as side gigs go, this is the book that Convince Them is the book that you can put down as being me mostly. How to Make People Like You is great, but this book's going bonkers. But I talk in there about what I call your statement of, I talk a little bit in this about your statement of fortune. My new book is a lot about it, but it goes like this. If I say to you, Bradley, why should I do business with you? I'm asking you. I'm putting you on the spot, of course.
Oh.
Well, why should I attend your podcast?
Well, because it brings a lot to the table. There's not a lot of podcasts that are similar to it, and we really think out of the box and help physicians be better physicians in a way that other podcasts aren't approaching it.
Okay. Not bad. Now, with a statement of fortune, you say to me, Nick, why should I buy your book, or why should I interview you? Go on.
Oh, Nick, why should I interview you?
You know how some people have trouble connecting and communicating face to face? And of course you say, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I write books and give speeches that make it sound really simple and interesting so they can meet more people and find fresh opportunities. I've just told you what I do, who I do it for, why I am different, how I do it, and what the benefit is to them, in a way that an 8-year-old could understand and remember it.
Got it.
This is something that, so you're on a plane.
So your elevator pitch, but
no, it's not an elevator pitch.
Only time to get from floor 1 to floor 2.
It's not. Look, here's the golden rule of elevator pitches. Don't pitch anyone in an elevator, okay? No, it's not an elevator pitch. It's what I do and why, and there's no pitch in there. There's no pitch in there at all. I've just told you what I do and who I do it for. I'm not saying you should buy it. Nick, I'm not getting, you sit on a plane and someone says, so what do you do? I say, Oh, well, some people have trouble connecting community. Yeah, well, I write books and give speeches. You've got to deliver it in a super conversational way. But it does say everything. And if you've got a side gig, when if you could articulate slightly differently the question I asked you, which was full of abstracts, I still came away from it not really knowing what you were doing. Look, I'm being an asshole online now, but that's not fair to you. But I mean, I really care. It can be, they can be done much more simple. It took me flipping years to figure that out. I didn't figure that out in the beginning. It's like most great bits of Word, they take 10 years to figure them out.
Yeah. So like a one-liner that summarizes, it sounds like your how you might be useful, actually, to go back to using your word about attitudes, is how you are useful.
Well, no, you start off with, how some physicians, blah, 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 have trouble, blah, 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 blah. Well, I gather information from all over the world, from the finest speakers there are, and deliver it to them in a way that they can listen to in the car or whatever.
Yeah.
So they can, and if you have a side gig,
do the same thing.
You go to a networking meeting, so what's your side gig? Some patients, they can't stand up when they're playing golf or whatever. Whatever it is. But you set the scene first of who your people are.
Great advice. Great advice. Well, you've got a lot to do because you've got a wedding coming up. I didn't know about that. Well, with all you've got going on, I appreciate you taking time out this morning to talk to me and to help the physician listeners to help those first few moments during the patient interaction to really help them like us and therefore trust us and move along with the visit. So for those who want to learn more about Nick Boothman, the books, again, the one that he's really wants us to read first is Convince Them in 60 Seconds, but convince them in 90 seconds. How to make people like you in 90 seconds or less. And, for those of us who are still single out there, not me, but if you are, how to make someone fall in love with you in 90 minutes or less. So Nicholas Boothman, thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. No matter what your insurance needs are, Set for Life Insurance has you covered. They're a nationally recognized leader in disability, life, and long-term care insurance, serving clients across all 50 states. Their dedicated team specializes in assisting medical residents, physicians, dentists, business owners, and other high-income professionals. Setforlifeinsurance.com or call them at 1-888-553-3559. Thanks for listening. I have a favor to ask. You listened to the episode until the end, which means you either fell asleep or you really liked the episode. So please share it or like it or comment on a social media post or write us a 5-star review. Something. It would really help me out. And maybe what you learned from this episode can help someone else too. The views expressed in this episode are those of the interviewer and interviewee and don't represent the views of their employer or even their significant other. Even though the magic of podcasting make it sound like I'm talking directly to you. This is not a doctor-patient relationship, and this is not medical advice, or financial advice, or really any advice. Thank us again for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring.